Question 1.
My department's home to school transport policy provides funding for transport assistance for eligible pupils travelling to and from school each day. Transport assistance is not provided under this policy for off-site extracurricular activities. Transport to off-site extracurricular activities is a matter for schools to organise and to fund themselves. The Education Authority offers vehicle hire services on request and subject to availability. The Extended Schools programme supports eligible schools by providing additional activities for children and young people outside normal school hours. This often takes the form of before and after school clubs, summer schemes and educational trips and excursions. Schools can use Extended Schools programme resources to meet the costs of these activities, including ensuring that all pupils can take part, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, and this may include meeting the costs of travel. The programme guidance requires schools to ensure that there are adequate arrangements in place for pupils to travel to and from school for the Extended Schools activities, over and above standard home-to-school transport arrangements. Close cooperation with the EA's transport section is therefore essential.
I call Ciara Ferguson for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your response in relation to extra-curriculum activities. In my own constituency in St Colm's College, they were delighted to partner with the Stephen Gerrard Academy to add a new innovative course to their post-16 curriculum. This is a full-time BTEC Level 3 Extended Diploma in Sport. The course is to be run at a satellite site in Greysteel, where the necessary facilities are available.
Can we have a question, please?
Okay. The financial demand of travel, which is 4 days a week to the site, is a barrier to these young people looking to avail of the opportunity. Can I ask the Minister to look at this situation and to put in place the necessary support so that these young people can access the opportunities they deserve?
Okay, thank you, and I thank the member for her question. And I'm aware of the situation because I know that other members have written to me in respect of the Stephen Gerrard football course at Greysteel. What I do understand is that the Vale Centre isn't categorised as a school, so therefore it can't be determined eligible for transport assistance, nor can home-to-school transport be provided to this venue under the policy. As I did say in the substantive answer, that EA do assist with vehicles and they can be hired. However, in relation to this, I will speak to officials to see if there is anything that can be done. But as I understand it, with the current policy, that's not possible.
I call Justin McNulty.
Can the Minister outline whether additional funding for school transport has been made available through the Education Catch-up programme?
I thank the member for his question. If he doesn't mind, I'll come back to him with regards to that.
Moving on, I call Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question to Minister.
I am fully committed to delivering this educationally and strategically significant programme, and following executive endorsement last year, I have issued a ministerial direction to move to the next stage. Pre-tender engagement with the construction industry was completed in August, and the next step is to formally commence a fresh main works procurement competition to build 5 post-primary schools and shared facilities, with the release of the invitation to tender scheduled for autumn this year. At that point, progress will be reviewed on a number of important elements of the programme, including the ongoing development of the work required to realise the educational benefits and the outcome of engagement with the construction industry. The Memorandum of Agreement, which details the arrangements for the management, ownership and governance of the campus, has been reconfirmed with the Education Authority and trustee bodies of the schools moving to the Stroul campus. The Department is continuing to work closely with the 6 school principals and their teams to build on the culture of sharing in Omagh, albeit within the context of ongoing challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Work is also progressing across a number of other work streams, including the development of detailed arrangements for the ownership, governance and management of the campus, consideration of how best to plan for and manage the future use and/or disposal of the existing school sites following relocation, and ongoing liaison with Fermanagh and Omagh District Council in relation to the Department's planning application for the proposed development works on the Gortin and Mountjoy Road.
I call Daniel McCrossan for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for her answer and for providing some clarification as to where the process is at. Minister, will you agree with me that this has been met with considerable delays? It needs to be given considerable prioritisation by the Department. And can you provide any definitive date as to when you expect work to actually begin on this site, so that the schools have been waiting for so long and the children in particular can actually benefit from these much-needed facilities in Omagh?
I thank the member for his question, and I think this is an incredibly significant site, hence why I was keen to move forward with the ministerial direction on it. A considerable amount of money has been spent to date, over £46 million. It's an incredible investment in that area, which I'm keen to see progress. I understand that work will continue with regards to trying to move forward to tender, and I would still hope that the construction can complete in 2025. We are looking for works in advance of that, particularly around our sports facilities and so on too, that at least that they will then be on site. But I think it's a positive news story for the area. While it is overdue, I'm confident that we're moving in the right direction.
I call Nicola Brogan.
I thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, the Stroul Shared Education Campus will transform education provision and will provide good opportunities for the young people throughout West Tyrone. But as you've already said, there's been lengthy delays to the development of the campus. So will you ensure that this campus is still a top priority for your department, please?
I thank the member for her question. In response to the previous member, I have shown my commitment to it very early in my tenure by issuing a ministerial direction to move this forward. I know that this has been welcomed by the schools and by those in the vicinity. It certainly is a priority and will remain a priority while I'm in post.
I call Thomas Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for her response thus far and her commitment to the ongoing works at the scheme in Omagh. But can I ask the Minister, she may be aware that there are concerns about the prospect of substantial sites in Omagh that will be left vacant whenever the new campus site is open. And can she give us any update on what work has actually been done in relation to these sites, and again in relation to the works for the widening of the Gortin Road?
I thank the member for his answer, and indeed there will be 5 post-primary schools relocating to the campus, which will leave significant gaps within the area. 2 of these sites are owned by the Education Authority and 3 by individual trustees, and it's for those site owners to decide really on the future and or the disposal of those sites. In recognition of the significance of the vacated sites to the town, the Department established the Vacant Sites Working Group in November 2016. The working group comprises members representing the site owners, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, and representation from relevant government bodies. The working group is actively considering how to best plan for and to manage the future use and disposal of the existing sites, and site-specific disposal strategies have been prepared as a first step in determining plans for their future use. These plans will be developed in line with and feed into the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council Local Place Shaping Plan and the Omagh Opportunity Sites Task Force. In relation to the Gortin Road scheme, this relates to the widening of an existing route along the Mountjoy and Gortin Road immediately adjacent to the Stroul campus, and this was discussed at the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council Planning Committee meeting on the 21st of October 2020. And it was agreed that the application would be deferred to enable discussions to take place between the Department of Education, the Department for Infrastructure Roads and the Council's Planning Department in order to allow for further consideration, clarification and resolution of the outstanding issues. And I understand that a revised scheme has now been submitted to the Council addressing those concerns.
I call Chris Little.
Deputy Speaker, can I ask the Education Minister by what amount of money the Stroul Shared Education Campus is over budget and the total amount by which this project is predicted to be over budget? Thank you.
I thank the member for his question. In overall terms, the estimated cost has risen from £169 million in 2016 to £228 million in 2021. But it should be noted that the 2016 figure did not include an allowance for inflation. This increase is largely due to increases in building and site work costs and the potential impact of construction price inflation in future years. The additional cost is due to a number of reasons, including costs exceptional to Stroul for site preparation works for transforming a former military base to a site fit for schools, significant external roadworks, a changing pavilion and maintenance building. The designs also provide for teaching accommodation which is deemed to be within acceptable tolerances and ancillary accommodation which is deemed justified both educationally and functionally than would be provided for 5 standalone post-primary schools. To ensure a campus which will promote genuine sharing, equality and full inclusivity for all, the needs of STEM pupils has also been incorporated into the design from the outset. And while this is added to the area and the costs, the most cost-effective design has been developed and can ensure that the campus functions smoothly and provides optimum facilities and supports learning for all students who use the campus.
And I call Justin McNulty.
The increase in cost and delivery times for raw materials is having an impact on a number of my department's capital projects. For those schemes which are currently under construction, the Department of Finance has provided guidance which seeks to deal with this current market uncertainty. My officials are currently working with professional colleagues in the EA and DOF on the implementation of this guidance. My officials are also working with EA colleagues to ensure that appropriate mechanisms are included within future contracts to permit consideration of material price inflation within the context of each contract moving forward. With regard to future schemes, my department will continue to deliver these within the capital budget allocated by the Executive.
Call Justin McNulty.
You say the Department of Finance Minister has issued guidance. Does that guidance amount to actual additional funding available to pay for these contracts? And what is the impact on the time frame of contracts, the programme? Are they being delayed, and are long-awaited school builds being delayed even further?
And I thank the member for his question. As I've said, that my colleagues, my officials have engaged with colleagues in the Department of Finance, Construction and the Procurement Delivery. They're currently finalising guidance that will assist parties in working out material costs and so on under Procurement Advisory Note, and this was first issued on the 3rd of August 2021. That does those discussions with regards to projects which are currently ongoing. That's their discussions which are at the moment being discussed, and I suppose with regards to particular bills, if you have something which is of particular concern to you, if you contact me, and I'll have a look to see where that currently is and how that's being impacted.
I call Pat Sheehan.
The pandemic and the need for greater ventilation and physical distance in our schools has brought into sharp focus the unsuitability, the out-of-date and even crumbling infrastructure in some of our school estate. And we must prioritise investment into modern, up-to-date facilities for children and young people. So can the Minister tell us when she expects to make her next announcement on capital projects?
And I thank the member for his question, and indeed the comments which he has made I have echoed in this chamber as well with regards to the disparity of provision across our school estate. It is my intention to make a further major capital call before the end of this financial year to hopefully address some of those issues, but as the member will be aware that there are a long line of schools which have already been announced, be it either through major capital calls or through SEP, which still actually have the work still aren't on the ground, and I'm sure there'll be members in this chamber who will ask particular questions about those schools who have been announced. So while it's positive that there is a capital call, it's really about ensuring that the money is available as soon as possible in order to action those calls.
I call Mike Nesbitt.
Deputy Speaker, the original question was about concerns regarding increased costs of raw material and labour. Does the Minister have any concerns about the availability of appropriate raw materials and suitably skilled labour?
And I thank the member for his question, and I do, and I think this has been impacted particularly in relation to COVID and the availability of various aspects of that, and also with regards to the availability of labour, because I know, for example, in some schools that key trades haven't been able to be at their work as a consequence of COVID-19, and that has produced delays of perhaps maybe 6 weeks whenever teams are out. So I do have a concern in relation to that and the slippage that will cause for a number of projects. But I think we are in exceptional circumstances, and I think we need to be mindful of that.
Moving on, I call Emma Sheeran.
The whole question number 4, please.
The purpose of my department's home to school transport policy is to facilitate pupils' attendance at school. It aims to ensure that all children are able to attend a suitable school regardless of where they live. The Education Authority is responsible for the operation and delivery of the policy. This includes assessing eligibility, determining the appropriate form of transport provided, and managing the school transport network in line with the policy. The EA currently transports approximately 92,000 pupils to and from school every day, and 70% of these pupils live in a rural area. This is a service that is highly valued by both parents and pupils, one which enables pupils to travel to and from school each day. Whilst there will always be some exceptions, it's my view that the vast majority of pupils in rural areas are receiving a service that gets them to and from their school in a safe, comfortable and timely manner. There is no doubt that it is more challenging to deliver home-to-school transport in rural areas in terms of ensuring the practicality and efficiency of routes, and pick-up and drop-off points on rural routes are more difficult to facilitate. However, the investment made through the provision of home-to-school transport plays a fundamental role in sustaining the rural public transport network in Northern Ireland. The current EA contract arrangements guarantees income to TransLink for the provision of 52,000 seats on the Ulster bus network.
Call Emma Sheeran for supplementary.
Minister, thank you for your answer, and you'll know this is something that I've written to you before, because I would like to get an assessment of how likely you are to change the policy that we currently have, which sees primary school children that live just underneath the threshold of 2 miles from their school unable to access any transport assistance, and high school children just underneath the 3 mile threshold unable to access transport assistance. I had a situation in my constituency with a child in Castledawson who wasn't able to get transport assistance to their chosen school of St Mary's Grammar, but had they been going to St Pius in the town, I have to ask the question, they would have been able to get help. So I just want to know if you're likely to change that policy.
I thank the member for her question. As she knows, the walking distances for home-to-school transport are set out in the Education and Library Board's Northern Ireland Order 1986. As she'll also be aware, there is a review ongoing now for the independent review of education, and as a consequence of that, the review for home-to-school transport has been held back in order to ensure that whatever proposals come out of the independent review will be accommodated in any future policy with regards to home-to-school transport.
I call Harry Harvey.
Deputy Speaker, Minister will be aware that many children walk along rural roads without footpaths to the bus pick-up points, or indeed even to the school itself, and often unaccompanied. What consideration is given to pupil safety in rural areas, or could the Minister provide an update on the review of home-to-school transport, or could I ask the Minister in what circumstances is a parental allowance offered in lieu of a seat on a bus? Thank you.
I think the member first question, he asked me several there, but I would share the member's concerns with regards to representing a rural constituency, and obviously pupil safety is a very important issue in ensuring that home-to-school transport policy operates effectively. While the EA is responsible for a pupil's safety, once they step onto a vehicle as part of the home-to-school transport service, parents do remain responsible for their children getting to and from the bus pick-up point and deciding whether they should be accompanied. Obviously, not all pupils, sadly, will have a parent who will take them to a pick-up point safely, and there may be specific issues that may need to be raised with regards to particular roads where it is unsafe. In that instance, conversations may need to be held with the Department for Infrastructure. However, if there are individual assessments required, then by EA, they will be done in line with the Road Safety GB guidelines. And as I mentioned to the previous member who asked the question, with regards to the review, unfortunately that's being held until the conclusion of the independent review of education.
I call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your answers thus far. Minister, in relation to home to school transport, I have had cases have been brought to my attention where children applying to a comprehensive school have been refused school transport because they have not applied to their nearest school, which happens to be a non-grammar, shall we say, secondary school, and these children have been refused transport. Is there going to be a review of that situation?
I thank the member for her question, and a number of members have asked this, particularly in relation to the transfer procedure which took place in the summer of last year. At this point in time, as I've said to previous members, there's no plans to review the policy at this stage until the independent review of education is completed.
I call Jim Allister.
Would the Minister undertake to speak with her executive colleague, the Infrastructure Minister, about an impossible transport situation which has been created by that department at Swemich College in my constituency, whereby the active travel unit of infrastructure, without consultation with the school, without consultation with Translink, removed the parking bays for buses on the public road in front of the school, now creating traffic chaos. Hundreds of pupils at that school of necessity travel by bus. So will the Minister discuss with the Infrastructure Minister the need to reverse that situation?
And I thank the member for his question, and he may be aware that a number of weeks ago that I did meet with the Infrastructure Minister, because I feel that there are a number of issues which I think our department should be working much closely with, particularly around road safety at schools. I'm not familiar with the exact details of the issue which has been raised by the member, but I'm happy to raise that with Minister Mallon.
I call Stuart Dixon.
Number 5, Deputy Speaker.
Since 2019, 4 minor capital works projects have been completed at Larne High School. These included accommodation works for special educational needs at a cost of £54,000 completed in November 2020, refurbishment of a 2G synthetic pitch at a cost of £300,000 completed in July 2021, a DDA specific accommodation scheme at a cost of £163,000 completed in 2019, and school meals accommodation project as a cost of £828,000 completed in October 2021. The schools also submitted minor works applications for an upgrade of boiler flues and roof works during the last minor works call in 2017. Unfortunately, these applications were not ranked high enough to progress at this time, but will remain on the new call list and will be considered for progression should additional funding become available. I am aware that senior officials from the Department and the Education Authority visited the school in early July to discuss minor works with the principal and are aware of the issues at the school. The EA has completed a condition survey which will inform the identification and prioritisation of any work at the school and will continue to engage with the principal in this regard.
Thank you very much, Principal Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. And I'm very aware that the monies that you've sent out have already been spent in the school. Much of it has, in reality, been painting over the cracks. For example, there wouldn't be a new meals hall because the need for the new meals hall was because the old one literally fell down. That's the state of the buildings we're talking about. Minister, will you undertake a visit to the school to see at first hand the perilous state of the building? Despite the additional works that have been done, this building is not fit for purpose, yet the principal and staff are delivering an excellent education in the school buildings at the moment.
And I thank the member for his question, and obviously we've had discussions before in relation to the school and others in the East Antrim area. I did give a commitment to visit the school, which had been planned for September. Unfortunately, it's been rescheduled, but I will be in contact with the member to give an update on a date as it gets put into the diary.
And I will now call Cara Hunter.
Mr Deputy Speaker, question 6, please, Minister.
When the new school term began, it was evident early on that the position regarding contact tracing was not sustainable, with high numbers of close contacts within the school setting being identified. This caused disruption in schools, with large numbers of children missing school and increased pressure on principals. Therefore, I agreed with the Health Minister that the Public Health Agency would take over the role of carrying out identifying close contacts in schools. In his letter to parents, pupils and schools on the 9th of September, the Chief Medical Officer explained that it was the right time to introduce a more targeted approach to the identification of close contacts in schools. This aligned with the easing of restrictions in society and with high vaccination rates. It was the right time for the PHA to lead the contact tracing in schools, as they do in all other settings. The new approach has led to fewer close contacts being identified in schools. With fewer close contacts being identified, we have seen an increase in the numbers of pupils attending schools. Attendance data for week commencing the 4th of October showed 0.7% of total pupil sessions being recorded as pupils self-isolating, having been identified as a close contact of a positive case. This is a significant reduction from the corresponding figure of 2.7% of sessions in week commencing the 6th of September. There's also a reduction of children learning from home due to social distancing, which has come down from 0.4% absentee rate to 0.1%. Therefore, the more targeted approach to identification of close contacts in school has resulted in improved attendance figures in schools, with less pupils being required to self-isolate. With the PHA taking on responsibility, this has also reduced the burden to teachers and school leaders, who are no longer required to have a role in contact tracing. Our school leaders and teachers can now focus on the safe and effective education of our children.
Ciara Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for her answer. Minister, can you outline whether your department will revisit keeping record of COVID-19 infection rates in our schools in order to inform policy making in the future? Thank you.
And I thank the member for her question. And that's a number of members have asked for specific numbers in relation to that. That's something that I'd need to keep under review and have discussions with my officials and those within health.
I call Padraig Delargy.
Minister to be aware of increasing reports of pupils who have tested negative on day 2 but resulted in testing positive on day 8. So obviously this is a serious concern for our schools, for the health of our children and for staff as well. Can I ask the Minister why your department isn't recording the number of pupils who test positive in the days after receiving a negative PCR test on day 2?
Again, thank the member for his question. That isn't data which my department holds, but it may be something which is held within health. And again, I'd need to have conversations with them as to whether or not it's permissible to share that information.
I call Robbie Butler.
Feedback from principals and teachers in regard to the revised contact tracing methodology to help build confidence.
And I thank the member for his question, and he will be aware, obviously, under the previous manner in which this was being done, where the responsibility lay completely with schools, it was unsustainable. And as a consequence of that, I did have discussions with the Minister for Health, his colleague, and the CMO about how that could change, and it did move to PHA carrying out the close contact notifications. I've received mixed views with regards to that. The majority of principals which I speak to feel that it has been a welcome relief, that they haven't had to spend weekends doing the particular work, and I know that there are others who perhaps feel a little bit more could be done, and perhaps the guidance should be looked at with regards to close contacts. Again, that's something which would need to be discussed at an executive level, as this was a decision which was made at the executive. But I think generally, with the exception of a number, there's relief that the process has changed. Now, you will also know that a considerable amount of work has gone into webinars and I suppose corresponding with principals with regards to this, but I welcome any feedback that I receive, and I certainly do pass it on.
And that is the end of our period of times for listed questions, and we now move on to topical questions. And I call Colm Gildernew.
Last Ceann Comhairle, thank the Minister for responses to date. Minister, we're 2 months now into the school term, and many newly qualified teachers are still unable to get registered by the General Teaching Council, preventing them from taking up jobs in our schools. This is completely unacceptable. I'm well aware of the dysfunctionality of the General Teaching Council, but this is now threatening livelihoods for young workers, and it's making it hard for our schools to ensure sufficient cover given the continued impact of COVID-19. So can the Minister explain what exactly she's doing to address that situation?
And I thank the member for his question, and I don't disagree with the issues around dysfunctionality of the GTCNI, and has been met with a number of issues over the last few months which have really created a perfect storm. There were difficulties in completing UK disclosure and borrowing service checks of applicants, with delays, as he says, in relation to the registration of locally educated, newly qualified teachers, those who were educated in the mainland, and also those who were regarded as the rest of the world, and this has been unsustainable. He will be aware that my predecessor, who was also cognizant of that, introduced a review of an independent review of GTCNI and all its processes. With regards to the immediate issue, I have at the time instructed my officials to ensure that they worked alongside GTCNI to ensure that young teachers who we have set great value, and given the fact that they've spent quite a considerable length of time studying for their PGCEs and equivalent degrees to teach, that they shouldn't be in any way inhibited from getting a position. So we have been working alongside GTCNI to ensure that this is moved quickly as possible.
I call Colm Gildernew for supplement.
I believe the Minister should seriously consider the future of the GTC and whether we need to look at winding the organisation down. But that aside, can I ask the Minister when she was first made aware of issues with regard to teacher registration, and what were the main issues driving those unacceptable delays?
I thank the member for his question, and I think I outlined some of those issues with regards to some of the issues around the completing UK disclosure and borrowing services, and there was also an issue in relation to the computer system and payments at that particular time, which also created a backlog. I became aware probably of the most recent issue, although I was aware of the other issues which have been beset GTCNI for quite some time before even taking up office, but the most recent issue I became aware of in August.
I call Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, recently you announced your department's NI 100 art competition. Can you give us more details about how schools can apply and what the actual time frame is? Thank you.
Thank the member for his question. I launched the NI 100 art competition for schools across Northern Ireland on the 11th of October. The competition is open to all preschools, primary, post-primary and special schools, and will run until the 15th of November. The aim is for pupils to share their love for the stunning landscapes, the natural beauty, the people and the places of Northern Ireland in 2021, and to reflect on the meaning of home and family. There are prizes of £200, £150 and £100. They'll be rewarded for first, second and third, placed across 5 age categories, as well as separate categories for pupils attending special schools. The school of the overall winner will receive £1,000 to spend on art materials for pupils, and a celebration event for the competition winners will be held in Parliament Buildings during December. This is an exciting opportunity for children and young people across Northern Ireland to participate in a centenary art competition, and it's a great way to motivate young artists and to showcase their talents and to further develop their creative skills. And I'm also delighted that the Ulster Scots Agency has come on board, and because I have noticed that they have been encouraging schools to give their artwork an Ulster Scots theme, and if any school wishes to do that, they can apply for additional funding of around £500 for art supplies, and that's on a first-come, first-served basis.
I call Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Are there any additional Department of Education NI 100 projects scheduled to start before the end of the calendar year in this centenary year of our great country? Thank you.
The art competition forms part of the department's NI 100 education programme, which is a number of projects that are being launched this year. They include a range of shared history resources, a coding programme for primary school pupils, NI 100 time capsules, a school in 1921 celebration event, and a Dragon's Den style entrepreneurial programme. The NI 100 education programme has a very much a strong curricular focus, and it's designed to underpin and enhance the teaching of key areas of learning across the curriculum, particularly world around us, history, ICT and entrepreneurship education.
I call Thomas Buchanan.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, there is growing concern about the education budget for 2022-23. Can you shed any light on how close the Finance Minister is to publishing his budget, and do you have confidence that it will have the necessary funding to underpin your department's projects for next year?
I thank the member for his question. And the budgetary outcome for 2022-23 hasn't yet been announced. The first step will be the announcement of the UK spending review outcome, which will take place on the 27th of October. And beyond that, I understand that the Finance Minister will engage with all ministers prior to publishing a draft executive budget for consultation as soon as possible thereafter. With regards to my own department, I can't say at this stage.
I call Thomas Buchanan for supplement.
Thank you for that. Minister, recently you will be aware that this Assembly passed a motion calling for continuing support for our schools. And given that this was a cross-party motion, received cross-party support from this Assembly, does that give you any confidence that that support will carry through into the Executive and that that will be replicated in the Executive budget setting process?
First question. So at this stage, I'm not in a position to comment as to whether or not my department will receive the necessary funding for next year. The indications are that the Northern Ireland bloc will face considerable pressures next year and beyond to meet the financial costs of education, health and so on. I am strongly of the view that cutting existing education services is not a viable way of facilitating reprioritisation elsewhere. I'm committed to working with executive colleagues to ensure that education is adequately funded moving forward. Certainly in recent years, my department has had to rely very much on significant additional in-year resources, and that's simply to meet inescapable costs and demand pressures and to avoid cuts to what are essential frontline services for children and young people, such as special educational needs, which I think is absolutely appalling. So ensuring that schools are adequately resourced is also a commitment within the new decade, new approach. And this can only be addressed if we have additional funding, and I would be looking for support in relation to that.
I call William Irwin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister, many people are interested in whether you're bringing forward legislation on flexible school starting age. Is your department still working on this issue, and if so, what are the timeframes for it?
The member for his question, and I am fully committed to introducing flexibility in school starting age, and I've asked my officials to carry out further targeted consultation with key stakeholders with a view to public consultation commencing later in the autumn. Ultimately, the time frame for moving forward through the legislative stages is not wholly within my control, and it's likely to be impacted by a significant number of executive bills and private members' bills, all vying for Assembly time. Any decision on taking a bill forward is very much dependent on being viewed as an executive and committee priority and on the capacity of the Office of Legislative Counsel to draft a suitable bill in time to allow Assembly scrutiny, but it still remains a top priority for me to bring this forward.
Call William Irwin.
Thank you, and can I thank the Minister for her response. The Minister, do you believe that the Education Committee will support the legislation and do all they can to make sure it is brought before the end of the Assembly term?
Well, I am encouraged that the Education Committee has previously indicated its support for bringing forward legislation on this issue. As I've said, it is important to make sure that the policy underlying any changes is right, and obviously taking the time to engage. But I am hopeful that with the agreement of the committee, and I'm sure if required, the legislative process in the Assembly can be shortened. And while it would be something which I would be reluctant to ask for, it may be something that we need to look at accelerated passage for.
I call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, as you're aware, after considerable length of time waiting, Devonish College in Enniskillen is now having a new build. Could you please give me an update, especially in relation to the shortage of labour and the difficulties of getting materials at this moment in time, when you would expect the school to be open for business?
I thank the member for a question, and absolutely, and Devonish College has waited a long time, as it was announced way back in 2013, and the work didn't start until 2019. At the moment, I understand that the expected date for completion is July 2022, and I would hope that that would still be the case.
Rosemary Barton for something.
Thank you, Minister. And to follow on buildings and schools, Minister, you will also be aware that Enniskillen Royal Grammar School are awaiting some work to be completed or to be actually started on the Batoura site of the school. Can you give me an update on when you expect that to get going?
Member for a question, and as you may be aware, I visited Enniskillen Royal Grammar School within the first week of taking up this post, and I spoke to the principal and the governors in relation to the challenges they currently have, particularly with having a split site. Again, this project is currently in design, with our IBA Stage 2 concept design submitted to the Department for review on the 18th of August. The Department's review is expected to be complete by the end of October, at which time the project may progress to RIBA Stage 3 developed design. In parallel with the design process, an addendum to the approved business case is being developed to reflect increased costs associated with the Batoura House listed building.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, can you update the Assembly on the progress on the implementation of the recommendation following the A Fair Start guidance documents and dealing with educational underachievement?
I thank the member for his question, and obviously this was a commitment within the New Decade New Approach, which was brought forward by my predecessor, and we've actually got to the stage now of having a report with a long-term action plan with 47 actions spread across 6 years and beyond. And the focus of the report is very much on early years. My department has begun to look at implementation of the report and an action plan. A programme board has been established and 3 meetings have taken place to date, and a schedule of meetings has been agreed. Senior responsible officers have been established for each of the 8 key areas identified within the report. And due to the cross-cutting design of the report, there is representation on the programme board from a number of departments and arm's-length bodies. The stakeholder reference group has been established to support the programme board to develop and refine the actions. This includes trade union representation, schools and community groups. I've allocated £4 million in this year's budget to begin this work, and I'm pleased to report that 2 of the 47 actions are already being delivered.
I call Trevor Clark for something.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Given in your answer you have referred to the New Decade New Approach in terms of this piece of work, has there been any firm budgetary commitment from the Finance Minister that the funding necessary to take the recommendations we'll put forward will be present for the baseline for 22-23?
Unfortunately not. The Northern Ireland Bloc is, as I said in a previous response, facing considerable pressure next year and beyond to meet the financial costs of education, health and other departments. I have met with other executive colleagues, including the First Deputy First Minister and the Economy Minister. I have meetings set up with the Minister for Communities, and I'm meeting the Health Minister tomorrow, just to express the importance of delivering on this cross-cutting report. Commitments to implementing Fair Start and the action plan can only be fully delivered with additional funding. In recent years, as I've said, my department has very much been relying on significant additional in-year resources to meet inescapables. But for me, Fair Start is an incredibly important piece of work. And unlike other reports which have been put on the shelf, I want to ensure that there is a pathway forward for this, that we do then see significant work coming out of it. This is a long-term commitment that we need to have if we actually mean what we say, and that we do want to have further underachievement particularly for our young boys. And so this is something which I'm committed to, and my own party is committed to.
Call Mervyn Story for a quick question.
Principal Speaker. Minister, thank you for your answers and thank you for the time that you spent in my constituency some time ago, a few weeks ago, in particular to visit a number of schools that are getting new builds. One of those new builds is in relation to Ballycastle High School, and you saw first-hand the plans. Obviously there were some issues of concern in relation to the procurement process. However, I'd appreciate if you could give us an update as to, are you content that there is sufficient progress being made and that this very much needed scheme, plan and something which is exemplary in shared education will be delivered?
I thank the member for his question. Certainly I had a very interesting day, although it was a very long day in North Antrim, but I did very much appreciate the opportunity to visit the Ballycastle campus and to meet with the two schools involved with it. The member, whenever he was the chair of the Education Committee, was very passionate about shared education, and particularly this example which has been in place now since the 1960s. This was a real trailblazer for shared education, and it shows how it works. And I would be delighted to see this project move forward as a reward for the hard work and the vision of those who have gone before with regards to this. As he said, due to current uncertainty in the construction market, there has been some delay in appointing a contractor for the project. However, the procurement process is ongoing and my department is continuing to work towards appointing a contractor in the very near future.
And that is the end of our period of time of questions to the Minister of Education. I ask members to take their ease for a few moments before our next period of questions.